Hey Guardians, I just want to let everyone know that I do have both a Twitch and a Twitter, and I'm very active on both. Feel free to come give me a follow on both, links in the description. Quick editor's note here before we get into the video. You're going to see some repeat clips in the background gameplay. We'll talk about why at the end, as well as have a brief discussion on Crucible right now. So do me a favor, stick around for that, but for now, let's get into the video. Alright, let's see what this thing looks like. Jesus Christ, what the fuck? Thing is huge. Like I'm carrying a whole goddamn Vex. Hey. Yeah, that was my actual reaction when I got this thing crafted. That weapon model is, sure something, isn't it? Guardians, today we're taking a look at Veiled Threat, a stasis 720 RPM auto rifle from the seasonal activities. This will, again, probably be a fairly short review. Most of these seasonal guns just aren't doing it for me, but this auto rifle does have one or two interesting things going for it that we'll take a look at. There's some good options here for PvP and PvE. It's an interesting weapon with some shortcomings that we'll discuss as well. So, starting with PvP, let's take a look at Veiled Threat's base stats. 27 range, 52 stability, 42 handling, 49 reload speed, 72 aim assist, 20 AE, 45 recoil direction. Honestly, minus the aim assist, fairly mid to below average stats here, but the main pain point for Veiled Threat is the range. Base range only gets you 22.6 meters, which is abysmal for a supposedly mid-range weapon. Now, I went into depth as to why this is a problem on my video about repose, but the short version of that is one of the reasons these 720 auto rifles tend to struggle is they sit so close to SMG range, and in SMG range they get bullied. And at mid-range they are outranged by nearly every other mid-range option in the game, so range needs to be a priority as far as your stat perks go. So with that in mind, for your barrel, go Hammerforged rifling. Full bore will get you more range, but it's really not worth a hit to your handling and stability. For your magazine, go for accurized rounds, and of course a ranged masterwork. That gets you up to 57 range with 28.6 meters. Still not great, but usable enough. Now, in that third column, you have To the Pain, Fragile Focus, and Threat Detector. Best options here are To the Pain, which we'll talk about because there's an interesting combo there, and Fragile Focus. To the Pain will give you a stacking aim assist and handling buff as you take damage, up to 10 stacks, 2 aim assists per stack, and I haven't found any solid numbers on the handling buff it gives. Now, one of the benefits here is these stacks do not have a timer. You can keep them as long as you do not stow the weapon or die. Then, of course, Fragile Focus will give you plus 20 to your range until your shields are broken. Moving on, in the fourth column, Gutshot Straight, Moving Target, Collective Action, Encore, Desperate Measures, and potentially Headstone as well. Now, Gutshot of course buffs your body shot damage at the cost of target acquisition, which essentially means your auto aim cone. This perk normally does make your weapon feel noticeably worse, but if you enhance it, it does seem to make it feel a little better. Now, this will not increase your time to kill, but it will help your forgiveness. Normally, Veiled Threat has a 0.83 second TTK at tier 10 resilience with 9 crits and 2 body shots. Then a 0.5 second TTK at below 10 resilience with 10 crits at tier 5 to 9 and 9 crits and 1 body at tier 4 and below. With Gutshot at tier 10 you can get away with 8 crits and 3 body. Tier 7 to 9 you're still at 10 crits, then at tier 1 to 6 9 crits and 1 body. Now you can give this a try if you want. I do think Gutshot feels a little bit better on auto rifles than on other weapons, but personally I would not say it's worth the hit to your target acquisition. Next up, Moving Target will buff your strafe speed and give you plus 10 aim assist when you're aiming down your sights. The usefulness here is self-explanatory: faster strafe speed in duels and an aim assist buff to make hitting your shots easier. Then next, Collective Action will give you a 10% damage buff for picking up an elemental pickup such as Fire Sprite, Stasis Shards, Ionic Traces, so on and so forth. Next up, Encore will give a stacking stability, range, and accuracy bonus. 1 stack will give you 5 range, 8 stability, and a slight buff to your accuracy cone. You get 1 stack for body shot kills, 2 stacks for precision kills, and you can get a maximum of 4 stacks. Next up, Desperate Measures, which is similar to Golden Tricorn, but easier to take advantage of for a smaller maximum benefit. You can proc this perk with weapon kills or grenade or melee kills. Weapon kills give a 10% buff, ability kills give a 20% buff. The buff will last for 7 seconds, and those can stack together for a 30% damage buff. So get an ability kill, you get a 20% damage buff. If during those 7 seconds you get a weapon kill, it jumps up to that 30% buff. Now 10% from a weapon kill will drop your TTK slightly, 0.75 seconds with 8 crits and 2 body at tier 9 to tier 10, 0.67 seconds with 9 crits at tier 2 to tier 8. Below 2, your TTK stays the same, but you can get an extra body shot in there. Not that anyone's really below tier 2 resilience these days. The 20% buff with an ability kill takes you to a 0.67 second TTK at tier 8 to tier 10 resilience with 8 crits and 1 body. Same TTK at tier 5 to 7 with 7 crits and 2 body. And below tier 5 you have a 0.58 second TTK with 8 crits. Then at max stacks you have a 0.58 second TTK across all resiliences with 8 crits at tier 8 to 10 and 7 crits and 1 body at tier 7 and below. Then lastly, we have Headstone, where precision final blows will create a stasis crystal at the side of a kill. Great if you have a stasis build centered around crystals, but beyond that, the only real use this has is it can stop a revive in a mode like Trials, or it can potentially provide some emergency cover. Now, talking roles here, let's first talk dueling roles. There's 2 combos I'd look for. First off, Fragile Focus with Moving Target. Fragile Focus's buff is actually very nice here. With the role I mentioned earlier, you have 28.6 meters of range, and when Fragile Focus is procced, it takes your range to 77 with 34.6 meters of range, which is a huge buff and will allow you to stay well out of the range of SMGs and have an easier time challenging other more rangy weapons. But keep in mind, you will lose that range buff the instant your shields are broken, so you have to keep that in mind when you take your engagements. Then of course, with Moving Target, you get the aim assist buff and the strafe speed buff when using your sights. This takes your aim assist when ADS from 72 to 82. The benefit here is pretty well self-explanatory. Then the next combo, and honestly probably my favorite funnily enough, is To the Pain and Moving Target, and most of the background gameplay is using this combo. Now in reviews I've done on other weapons with To the Pain, I wasn't a huge fan of this perk for the most part, but when combined with Moving Target, this auto rifle literally aims itself. I have never ever used an auto rifle where landing crits was so insanely easy as with this combo. You have Moving Target just giving you that flat aim assist buff, taking you to that 82 aim assist mark, which is already very high, and then again you get 2 stacks of To the Pain for taking damage. Again, this stacks up to 10 times, and each stack gives you 2 aim assists. So that means, depending on how many stacks you have of To the Pain, you can have anywhere from 83 aim assists to 100 aim assists, and again, you can keep those stacks for as long as you do not stow the weapon or die. Now, of course, you do still have that low range here, but the ability to just land your shots with minimal effort more often than not is huge, and it makes this weapon feel so goddamn good. This combo will beam people. You'll just have to be very careful with the ranges of your engagements. Now, for slaying roles, I'd stick with To the Pain or Fragile Focus, depending on what you value more here, the heavier aim assist or Fragile Focus, and combine it with Desperate Measures or Collective Action. Now, given that we're not stacking To the Pain's aim assist buff with Moving Target's aim assist buff, I would probably go for Fragile Focus here. From there, it's just a matter of picking whichever damage perk you prefer. Of the two, for general use, I do prefer Desperate Measures, 10% damage buff on a weapon kill, 20% on an ability kill, 30% if you get both. However, Collective Action can be built into, particularly with Behemoth Titan with Tectonic Harvest, where you can essentially have a constant damage buff if you build into it. Now, as far as performance goes, Veiled Threat feels pretty good. It has a very clean sight picture, and it feels controllable enough. It's very sticky, and landing crits is never much of an issue, but that lack of range is definitely very noticeable, and it will get you killed if you don't take your engagements very carefully. You need to make sure you're out of SMG range while staying inside the range of other mid-range weapons. This can make even just picking which fights you want to take rather frustrating. But honestly, my biggest complaint about this weapon is that just truly awful weapon model. I mean, look at this thing. It's huge. huge. It's like you're carrying a goddamn school bus around. It is insanely obstructive, and this can get you killed if you're not careful, just due to have a significant portion of your screen cut off. You can miss an opponent standing right next to you if you're not paying attention. But what I will say is that this is a very fun weapon to use. There are absolutely stronger options within its archetype, but it still feels very fun, particularly just beaming people with that to the pain and moving target roll I mentioned. So this is not a competitive weapon by any means, but for a lot of people, myself included, sometimes a weapon being fun is enough to use it. Now, moving on to PvE roles. In the third column, I'd look at Strategist for class ability energy on kills, Shoot to Loot for obvious reasons, or potentially Attrition Orbs, though I'm still not really a big fan of that perk. Then in the fourth column, Collective Action as spawning elemental pickups is insanely easy in PvE. Desperate Measures as getting that 30% damage buff is also going to be very easy in PvE. You'll honestly be doing it without even noticing it a lot of the time, or Headstone, of course, if you have a strong stasis build going. Now for just general ad clear, I'd probably just go with Strategist along with one of the damage perks I mentioned, depending on which you prefer. For most PvE activities, either one is going to get the job done. Though if you're taking this into something like a GM, then I'd say that the higher damage buff from Desperate Measures is going to be more helpful. Now, one potentially interesting combo would be Attrition Orbs and a damage perk, and then Stasis Surges, but committing Surges to a primary weapon probably isn't the smartest idea unless you are also using a Stasis heavy weapon. Now, Shoot to Loot will work fine with anything. Shoot to Loot gets discounted more often than it should. A lot of very high level PvE players love this perk for a reason, and it works particularly well if you're in a difficult activity such as a Master Raid or a GM and you have a Cenotaph Warlock with you, since when they make heavy, you don't have to worry about actually picking up the ammo. Then the intrinsic trait that creates a small pool of Radiolaria on multi-kills definitely comes up more often in PvE, but for the most part it wasn't really doing anything too crazy. It's not necessarily a bad PvE weapon, but again, there's a long list of better PvE primaries out there. So overall, I do like Veiled Threat, but it is definitely kind of on the struggle bus. But like I said before, the seasonal weapons from Echoes just aren't really doing it for me for the most part. It's one of the reasons I haven't really spent much time doing seasonal stuff. The weapons are really pretty lackluster for the most part. But regardless, I did still enjoy my time with Veiled Threat. And that's all for me today, Guardians. If you enjoyed this video, then do me a favor and hit that like button and leave me a comment with your thoughts on Veiled Threat. As always, the best way you can support this channel is to hit that subscribe button with the bell icon. It really does help me out. For now, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians. So, like I mentioned towards the start of the video, you probably noticed some repeating clips inside of the background gameplay. And this is probably going to happen every now and then for the foreseeable future. Crucible right now is just, I mean, it's bad. It's really bad. And until it's in a better state, the motivation to play is very, very low. There's just so much garbage inside of Crucible right now that makes it just incredibly unfun and unrewarding to play. As some examples here, obviously Prismatic with Hunter, you have Smoke Bombs, Swarm Nades, Clones, Dusk Fields. With Titans, you have the Behemoth melee, which for some godforsaken reason they decided you should be able to combine with Knockout, with Diamond Lances on top of that, which, by the way, freezing should not be a thing at all in PvP, period. Then with Warlocks, of course, Cold Snaps, Penumbral Blast, triple Electro Slide melee, spam, so on and so forth. And that's not even mentioning all the crap that was broken before Prismatic was introduced. So Stasis just in general, it's not fun to play against. It's been bad for the game as a whole. Then you have Solar Warlocks, which have some incredibly broken melees. Will of Radiance is still broken. Heat Rises is intensely unfun to play against. Then of course Void Titan, you have Overshields and Scatter Grenades, which Scatter Grenades are just, they need to be nerfed across the board. Then of course Void Hunter, Smoke Bombs, again, Invis spam is never fun to fight. Strand Hunter, Suspend also really should not be a thing in PvP. And then there's just abilities in general. For one thing, they just do too much all at once. Like Smoke Bombs don't need to weaken and slow and blind and ping radar. Titan melees do not need to send you flying and do massive damage and slow or blind or suppress depending on the subclass. Warlock Rifts should not heal over and over and over again in the middle of a gunfight, and again, Heat Rises is way, way too strong. And then of course there's just just the healing crap in general. Healing grenades, healing rifts, so on and so forth. All of that really needs to catch a pretty heavy nerf in PvP. Then again, with stasis, slow and freeze, and on strand suspend, these really shouldn't be a thing in PvP at all. Not in a game where movement and positioning is as important as it is. At the very least, every single class needs a fragment that acts as a hard counter to these effects. And once again, the uptime on abilities is just way too high. We really need, at the very least, that 30% ability cooldown penalty that we used to have back in the game desperately. Then in 6s, shared heavy should not be a thing at all, or at the very least, anyone who grabs heavy should only get 1 kill's worth of heavy, and heavy should not be a thing at all in Comper Trials. Then, of course, there's the special weapon spam. They mentioned technical difficulties. My main concern is that it's because they're worried about snowballing, which is completely and utterly absurd. People having to earn special ammo is not snowballing. An entire team getting to pull heavy is snowballing. Plus, if we're going by that logic, then why do we have things like kill perks on weapons? Then, as far as the weapon meta goes, overall, I don't think the primary sandbox is really that bad. The special weapon spam is extremely frustrating. High impact pulse rifles and 120s definitely need to be taken down by like several notches. And then weapons that are just purely not fun to fight against, such as bows or final warning, really need to be looked at. Then again, quitter penalties in quick play, they just need to go away. I mean, for one thing, it's not stopping anyone. I still see just as many people leaving mid-match as I did before they brought quitter penalties back to quick play. And especially given that most of the maps in this game are honestly really pretty bad, and we don't have anything like map voting or map filtering, and then you couple that with the truly horrific lobby balancing on top of the really pretty low player count right now, yeah, quitter penalties just, they don't need to be a thing inside of quick play. They need to go away. I understand why they need to be there in trials and comp, but they don't need to be there in quick play. And all of that goes without mentioning, you know, connections are getting worse, so on and so forth. The player count is in the gutter. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So for right now, I'll still stream PvP, get what, you know, that's where I'll test weapons. I'll get whatever clips I need, you know, the bare minimum as far as clips go. And that, you know, again, if I have to repeat some clips, that's just how it is for now. I've always avoided trying to do this, but with how intensely disengaging PvP is right now, I just, you know, I will get the absolute minimum for what I need to put together a video for, you know, a solid review, play enough to get the info that I need and whatnot, and then I'm just going to go do other stuff. That's just how it's going to go. As it stands right now, I am still working on getting that second YouTube channel going. So once that's up and running, I will let you all know. The Discord server is also still in the works. It's very close to being ready. I just have to find some mods and all that sort of thing. But as it stands right now, my original plan was to, you know, stick, if Final Shape was good, which the DLC was, then I was going to stick it out through Echoes, Revenant, and Heretic. And for the time being, at least, that is still the plan. But if by the end of Heretic, PvP is still just in the gutter, then we may start thinking about potentially slowly moving the channel in a different direction. But that's pretty much all that I have to say. I will see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.